but what's the worst that can happen?
At any time, that could have dropped down either one of these chokes and into the engine and been an absolute disaster. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Ferrari 308 carburetor rebuild project. I'm going to start with showing you something that's left me a little bit speechless. This is a fuel delivery valve. As you can see, there's a hole either side, hole at the bottom, and there's a lead plug in the top. And if I shake it, hopefully you can hear there's a little ball bearing rattling around inside. However, when I took apart the very first carburetor and I took the lid off, I was faced with this as a view. So this is the same valve. You can see there's a tiny ball bearing sitting on the top. Now bear in mind, I've done 40 odd thousand miles in this car, and that ball bearing has just been sitting there rather than being inside. At any time, that could have dropped down either one of these chokes and into the engine and been an absolute disaster. Obviously, the lead plug has come out at some point. The ball bearing's fallen out. Somebody's replaced the lead plug and then forgotten about the ball bearing and obviously just popped it on the top there. I've not bored you with the cleaning process, but basically when it was together, before I started pulling it all apart, I used some degreaser on the outside, the body, just using a toothbrush just to loosen it all up and then rinsed it all off. Now as everything's apart, I'm starting to use carb cleaner and just get in there and just make sure everything is as clean as possible before I put it back together. Now it's time to crack on with that rebuild. To start with, refitting the bearings, giving them a good grease up, and then there's the washers, spacers and the throttle lever. There's a tab washer and a nut on the end. You just want to make sure you don't over tighten that so everything moves freely. Placing the butterflies there, put new screws into the bottom. I'm going to use a liquid locking agent, obviously fuel resistant on that, to make sure they don't come loose. Next up are the air bypass screws, and a locking nut on that as well. The mixture adjustment screws, the Venturi is already back in place, and then we've got the accelerator pump. Now the diaphragm is a perishable item. This is the one that's come out of this particular carburetor, and I don't know if you can see that, but it's all starting to separate up. So definitely it was time for that one to be replaced. When setting it up, make sure that the lever on the pump sits on here, so once the throttle is operated, you can see it's moving that arm. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of fuel in here once I've got the jets in, and operate that just to make sure that that is pumping fuel through the system. Added some fuel to the float chamber, and I'm just going to see if the pumps work. So just going to spin this on the side there. You can hear the suction. And hopefully, there we go. That side, here we go. You can see the fuel coming through. So that's working fine. On the carburetor lid, replacing a new needle and valve on a new washer and refitting the float valve. We need to adjust the float valve, which is done by sitting the lid on its side so it's resting gently against the valve and not pressing against it. And to measure the distance, we use vernier calipers. And there you have it. 2 down, 2 clean carburetors and 2 grubby ones still to go. So while the carbs are off, I thought I might as well have a go at cleaning up the top of the head and in the V of the engine as well. It's pretty grubby in there, but I've started to have a clean up along here, and now I just need to do this side. Look, you can see where I've not done here, how black it was. So a big difference over there. Can't quite get into everything, but giving it a good go. Last couple of bits to do. I've had a delivery from Eurocarb. The guys there were really helpful on the phone, so I will leave a link to them below. They've got everything you need for the carburetors. Now what I've received from them is a replacement spacer. Now under 3 of the carburetors, the spacers were pretty much welded onto the bottom of the carbs, so I've decided not to separate those. The first one that I removed, however, was loose. It's come off, and although I've cleaned it up, I've decided to replace it. And as you can see, the new spacer comes complete with its own gasket. Now the other thing I've got from them is the screws for the butterflies. So I'll be putting those back in with a little bit of adhesive, and obviously that is going to be fuel resistant adhesive as well, just to make sure that they don't come loose. Now we've got all 4 carburetors cleaned up, all the service items fitted, and they're reassembled. One more thing we need to do before refitting them to the car, and that is to preliminary set up the idle mixture adjustment and speed. So the preliminary settings are for the idle mixture. We've got these 2 screws here, one for each of the chokes. This is a twin choke carburetor, so we've got one for each. Then the other is the idle speed adjusting screw, which is this one here. It's got a small spring on it, and that rests on the throttle movement here. So this one, setting for that is to turn it so it just touches the throttle, and then it's half a turn in, so half a turn. And for these ones, I've actually got 2 references. Basically, we've got to screw it all the way in. And the references I've now got are, one of them says to unscrew it 2 full turns. The other one says 3 full turns. So I'm going to go 2.5. So half, 1, half, 2, half again. Same goes for the other side. So that's that first carburetor now set up. I've just got to do the same with the other 3, and then they're ready to refit back onto the car. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and hopefully found some useful information there as well. I have to say, I've actually really enjoyed pulling these carbs apart and rebuilding them, and it's been worthwhile looking at a couple of the things that I've found wrong with them. So it's been great. Next video will be me putting them back onto the car and tuning them up, and fingers crossed it'll be running better than ever. So until then, thanks for watching. Take care.